Welcome to Scrolling to Death. I am honored to be joined today by neuroscientist, educator, and author Jared Cooney Horvath. Hi, Jared.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. We are going to talk about the digital revolution that has taken over our schools. You know, I met recently with an office at the White House and was told directly by our administration that our education system is broken and that the solution is screens. And so our children are now learning primarily from devices starting in TK when they're 4 and 5 years old. So I want to start there with you. Are schools actually broken, and is technology the solution?
That couldn't be any more backwards if you tried. The next time somebody says school is broken, and that's a favored argument amongst tech gurus, just say, give me your data. Like, by what metric are you saying that school is broken? A lot of people have anecdotes, but man, I have anecdotes. Stubbed my toe the other day. It doesn't mean anything. When you ask for data, they can't give you any because by all metrics, everything except for 2 metrics, everything is basically going up or staying the same. So if you just think about school en masse, more kids around the world have access to it. More kids are graduating each year. Gender gaps have not only closed, they're now reversing. Racial and social economic gaps are starting to close. COVID opened them back up, but what are you going to do? So everything looks good. We're going in the right direction, except for 2 things. 1, student mental well-being. 2, student learning. By all means, school seems to be failing at raising kids who are smart and healthy, kids who know about the world and can survive within it. Now you track that data back and you say, well, when did things really start going off the rails? Lo and behold, 2000. What happens in 2000? That's when the internet really surges. That's when we really start getting tech in schools. 2002 is the first one-to-one program set in Maine, and the more tech in schools, the more learning and well-being goes down. So all the people who say school is broken, the only way you could say it's broken is because of tech. And then when they come out and say tech is the answer, you say, no, tech is the problem, mate. Putting more tech in can be ready for less learning and more well-being problems.
Yeah. And that should be our goal, though, is to raise smart and healthy humans, right? And so we're doing the opposite of that by introducing tech.
And this is where it gets kind of trippy. Yes, absolutely. I don't want to make anyone angry or feel uncomfortable or anything, but
it's okay.
Our children are the first generation in the last century to be cognitively worse than we are. And that's just a nice way of saying dumber than we are. On every single cognitive measure, they perform worse than we do. Attention, memory, memory span, creative thinking, divergent thinking, critical thinking. They're lower across the general IQ. Now the problem is, now this is fine. If generations were always up and down, you'd say, cool, things come and go. But we have been on a steady increase for over 100 years. Every generation outperforms their parents, and that's what we want. Every generation wants their kids to be healthier, happier, smarter than they are.
Yeah.
We're the first generation in history where that trend is now reversed. And I don't think it's for lack of care. I don't think it's for lack of trying. And I really want to give tech the benefit of the doubt. I think when they came in the 2000s, they genuinely believed what they were doing was right.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, though. It just everything that we're doing with tech flies in the face of how we know learning works. And so, yes, in a sense, we are harming them, but was with the best intentions. I don't think anyone set out to make sure our kids were doing worse. This is the world we built.
Yeah. And was there a point where you feel like it went wrong? Like where even those who were making a lot of money at these ed tech companies were like, oh crap, like this isn't working like we thought it would, but we're going to keep moving because we're making a ton of money. Like was there a point of inflection there?
That's an interesting question. If you had to pick one moment, I would say it was the 2015 OECD report on tech and computers, because the OECD had always been wildly pro-tech. And they came out and their report basically said, across every measure we have, the more kids use tech at school, the more their learning goes down. And then everyone said, well, maybe it's baseline measures, maybe it's this. They did another follow-up review on the back end of that where they said, it turns out the more your school invests in tech, the worse your kids are going to do. So it's not just the more they use it, it's also the more you continue to invest in it, you're actually driving it lower. So I'd say that moment when the OECD stood up and said this doesn't work was probably a moment. But if you think about it, the OECD is still very pro-tech. So I don't know why they didn't take their own advice, but... What are you going to do?
Why wasn't there changes made at that point? Like, we went deeper and deeper, and obviously, forget COVID, like even from 2015 to 2020, we were still accelerating the technology in the classroom. So do you have any insight or just thoughts on why we didn't step back at that point?
There are probably going to be three major underlying things. One is the big one, money. Why step back when someone's making a ton of money?
Okay.
And by making that money, they can give it to you for free. So tech is basically, schools don't pay for tech until much later in the day. So why would I say no to a free device? Especially if I'm told, and that brings into number two, if I'm told that that device is going to help. The narrative around EdTech is so freaking powerful. And you have TED Talks to thank for that. Good luck finding a TED Talk that says education is working. Every single TED Talk says education is broken and the solution is is technology, which shouldn't be a shocker because the T in TED is tech. If they don't say that, they're probably going to sound like an idiot. But millions of people watch TED Talks. Very few people actually read what learning is all about. So I'd say on one hand, you've got the money issue. On the other hand, you've got the narrative issue. And I'd say on the back of that, you've got the fear of missing out issue. If there's one thing schools do in modern society, it's they compete. And that sucks. But you need more students, more enrollment than the other school. You need higher test scores than the other school. So when a school comes out and says, we have a 3D printer, you don't want to be the school that says, well, we don't. So tech basically perpetuates itself when we're battling to see who can be the supreme school for kids.
Okay.
At no point is there data driving this. It's just what looks best in a brochure. Unfortunately, seems to be driving a lot of these decisions.
Okay, so let's talk about test scores for a minute, because from my experience with my kids previously in public school system, they spend weeks and hours a day frustratingly taking digital tests, tapping on the screen, getting frustrated, having to ask questions, like burning out.
Yeah.
It leads me to question, because ed tech companies will tell us based off of these test scores that grades are rising and use that as proof for online learning that it works or something. And so how real are these test scores even? Like, are we getting the real deal, or is this all just a farce?
So the only way to kind of measure that is you can no longer use grades for a measure of anything, unfortunately, because since 2000, we've had significant what we call grade inflation. Basically, more kids are getting A's, fewer kids are getting F's than ever before. But at the same time, if you look at international testing metrics, everyone is performing considerably worse. So you've got about a 10% increase over 20 years in the number of A's and a 10% decrease in overall performance on every international measure. So here's where you see grades by and large mean nothing now. During COVID, especially in Washington and in Oregon, there was legislation that said you cannot give a kid an F. So for 2 years, we had 0 Fs in 2 states. God. You literally could not fail a kid because they were afraid it would harm something. Hell if I know. So you didn't even have to show up. So long as you were enrolled in a school, you went to the next year, whether you came to a single session or not.
Okay.
So there's your grade data for you. So what are you stuck with? You're stuck with international testing data or academic research. Now, to be fair, some people get mad at testing data. They go, oh, that's so, and this is a big EdTech pushback. That's surface level. That's facts. It doesn't test deep creativity. It doesn't test deep thinking or knowledge. But the trick is, mate, deep creativity and deep thinking come from facts. If you don't do well on a fact-based test, 100% you will not do well on a deep thinking test either.
Okay,
so good rule of thumb, if you see a dip in fact-based testing, you guarantee you will see a dip in everything else. You don't need to test it anymore. It's like if you break your eggs while making a cake, I don't need to ask you, how'd your cake come out? It didn't. It's over. There is nothing left here for you. So when we do look at international testing data, it is down across the board significantly, with the biggest drops in most international tests in this last testing cycle, bigger drops than we've seen ever. And now, if you go looking at the tests, here's where they do really good things. If you look at the scores, you'll notice the drops yourself. Year on year, there's point drops. What you won't notice is a process called renorming. Anytime a test gets too good or too bad, what the test makers will do is renorm it to make those scores appear comparable to kids in the past. So let's say this year's test is super easy and every kid aces it. Compared to last year, every kid got 50% on a hard test. What they're going to do is renorm it so acing it this year is equivalent to 50% last year. It looks like there was no change.
Okay.
So all the renorming that's been done over the last 2 decades in all standardized tests, and this is in the US, this is international, is upwards, which means every kid is doing worse, significantly worse year on year than the year before, and they just keep renorming them to make them appear average. So it's real hard to actually sift through and say, if you look at the actual score, what is it? Like, it's real hard to find the field data. But the few people who have found the field data in certain tests basically say the drop you've seen in the last 20 years, double that. That's what you'd see if they didn't renorm. So it's worse even than we think it is. But EdTech loves renorming because you can just basically sweep problems under the rug.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's statistics. This is what we get to do.
Ooh, for parents who are listening, one tactic I've heard parents do is opt out of state testing. And that's something that some states, I don't know about all, let you do. And so if you don't want your child, like there's just a little step, like if you don't want your child for weeks sitting on the device, opt them out of school testing, and then they get to do something else instead. I've heard of kids that get to volunteer in the library with the kindergartners those days or something. So
tests like that don't boost your learning in any way, shape, or form. They're not there for learning. They're there for statewide, nationwide decision making.
Right.
So if you don't take it, if you can get out of it, why? I would in a second. It doesn't do me any good.
Well, and if the scores are actually kind of pointless, then there's no reason to be taking it anyway.
If they're just going to futz the numbers anyway.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is fascinating. Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about virtual learning versus offline learning. And parents are being told that using devices will enhance our children's learning, keep them more engaged in their education. There are schools who do all of their academics online now, like the Alpha School model. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 Hour Learning, I interviewed their founder and we had quite a tense conversation. But this school claims that on average, Alpha students learn 2.6 times faster than peers on nationally normed MAP tests. I myself was, look that up.
I would love to analyze that data myself, but okay, go on.
And then I myself was told by my public school district that if my children were not given iPads in kindergarten, they would receive a substandard education. So can you dig a little bit further here? Like, is virtual learning in any way an optimal choice compared with offline learning?
No, not that we've ever seen. Every data point basically comes back to purely online, bad, always bad.
Okay.
Like COVID was the greatest case study in that of all time. Once we went pure digital, everything goes downhill. But even in schools that have digital options, even the best digital option schools underperform the worst public schools. It's just not a good way to learn. It doesn't align with how human beings learn.
Okay.
Now, the Alpha School, at least they're going to have support. So they're going to have teachers on site. They're going to have people who help them,
guides,
presumably.
Not teachers, guides.
Which is the stupidest thing I ever heard because no one went to school to become a guide, but God bless you all.
I know.
But if you think about the absurdity of that, if they're learning 2.5 times faster, let's even make it less than what he just said, 2.5 times faster, they should complete a K through 12 education in 3 years? That means as a third grader, they should be doing 12th grade work. Does that make a ton of sense to you?
No.
When people throw around numbers like that, it sounds very cute, but that's just not how data works. There's a way you've got to actually analyze this stuff to see if it's meaningful. Now, if they're talking about 2.5 times faster for something like vocabulary, they memorize 20 words when other kids memorize 10 words. That's awesome. But the thing you got to remember about a lot of this is there are mechanisms of learning that human beings have developed for millennia. That we now need to take account of. One of those issues is a concept called transfer. Basically, human biology does not like to move knowledge and skills between context. It tries to lock it down. If you learn something in a red room, your biology will fight to keep that information in a red room. So now if I move you over to a green room, you're going to find it harder to access that information, use those skills, simply because our biology says, no. You're in a new context. We need to develop new skills over here.
Okay.
So transfer is not impossible. We do it all the time. It's just we're biologically built not to. It's a very hard process to go through.
Right.
When we learn in real life, we tend to mix the context up a lot. Like, let's say I'm a kid learning vocab. I'm going to read it in a book. I'm going to see it on a chalkboard. I'm going to hear it in my ears. I'm going to high-five a kid while I'm saying it.
Captions on the TV, which we like to leave on.
Oh, God bless you. We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay, good.
But so basically, you have a broader context within which you learn, which makes that knowledge easier to kind of move between new contexts. Not easy, not automatic, but it's easier.
Okay.
You learn on a screen. A screen is such a narrow context that our biology basically locks things down on your screen. So what you'll see is the very first Alpha School was actually built in 1925. It's over a century old.
Wow.
It was a school built based on teaching machines. It was basically cool. Here's a question, answer it, pull a lever, right or wrong. Here's your feedback. Let's do it again. It was the exact same model. Nothing's different. They ended up going nowhere. It never took off because the founder himself said, look, they're really good when they're using the tool, when they're using the machine. As soon as you asked them a question in a different context or took them off of the device, none of them could tell you anything. Almost nothing stuck.
Right.
They repeated this in the 40s with Skinner's machines. They repeated this in the 60s with the auto tutor. We've been doing this again and again, and we keep collapsing because you get stuck on the machine.
Wow.
So if they're learning 20 more vocabulary words on a screen, I'd say, sweet, bring your kid and my kid. Let's take them to the park. Watch who outperforms who on vocabulary. It won't even be close. Mine will kill yours because without a screen, yours won't know what the hell is going on.
Wow.
So you tend to lock that information into that context of that screen. It goes against biology. I would then push back another kind of concept that you always want to think about, especially when it comes to online learning, besides just getting stuck online. And you got to assume most parents will be like, well, cool, if my kid is going to live online for the rest of their life, who cares if they're stuck to a computer? Which breaks my heart, but I hear that all the time. Cool.
Yeah.
The other thing you've got to remember is that learning is interpersonal. We developed learning mechanisms explicitly to learn from each other. That's why they exist. That's why humans are humans. We have an incredible interpersonal learning mechanism. Underpinning that mechanism is a process called empathy. Empathy, most people think that's an emotion, like happiness, joy, empathetic. It's one of those words that have gotten completely somehow skewed recently.
Okay.
Empathy is not an emotion. Empathy, you don't have it, I don't have it. Empathy isn't a thing people have. Empathy is a biological resonance between two human beings. When you and I empathize with one another, we start to blink at the same time. Our heart starts to beat at the same time. We start to breathe at the same rate. We get the same brain patterns, the same skin conductance. You don't choose to do it. I don't choose to do it. It only emerges when people start to interact. It turns out empathy is one of the biggest drivers of learning. Empathy is the driver of our learning mechanism. So the more empathetic, the more resonant you are with a teacher, with an instructor, with someone you're learning from, the more you're going to learn from them. You're going to learn better, faster, easier. Take it to tech. We cannot empathize with tech.
No.
Because empathy, by definition, requires two sets of biology to become synchronized. If I'm on a screen, there's only one set of biology, me. I cannot synchronize with Duolingo. I cannot synchronize with Lumosity.
Right.
So automatically, learning will go down on a computer purely because learning is meant to be interpersonal. Take away the other person, I can still learn. By all means, I read books all the time. I'm just going to learn less accurately and much slower than if I had a person standing in front of me doing it with me. So that's the other kind of good luck with you if you did all digital education. Love to see you in a in a classroom beyond that. It's going to be very difficult.
And I want to ask you kind of how this all plays out, but let's dig a little bit more into, some of the feedback that I get is like technology is the future. Our kids need to, this was the woman at the White House. Our kids need to learn tech as early as possible. We need kids going into tech careers. Therefore, they need to learn as early as possible. So can you respond to that?
Okay, just flip that. We need more doctors than ever before. Does that mean we need to start teaching them surgery in first grade?
Right.
My guess is you wouldn't make that argument because it's kind of silly. You realize there's front loading that needs to happen before we develop the skills relevant to employment. That's historically been the job of a K through 12 education. We're not here to pump out employees. We're here to teach you how to learn and think, drive your own thinking, so now you can enter into an apprenticeship or go to university and start the specific skills relevant now to work.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody says, yeah, kids need to learn AI, I'm like, ask them, do you know how to use AI? 100% of them will say, yeah. How old are you? 40. How did you figure it out, mate? How did we? I can use AI. I can use tech, just we're doing it right now. How do we figure it out?
Yeah.
Because school teaches you how to figure things out. If you replace that with what we call a tools-based education, rather than teaching you how to learn, I'm going to teach you how to do a very specific thing. As soon as that tool becomes obsolete, which it will in the next 2 years, you're done. You have nothing to fall back on. You wasted your 2 years.
Right.
So there was a time where we taught kids explicitly. Everyone said kids need to know Morse code or else they're never going to be employable. So we explicitly took time and taught kids Morse code. How pointless was that 2 years later?
I know.
I mean, so trying to predict the future is always going to be a miss. But think about it like this. Let's pretend we do want kids to learn computers. Sweet. What we're making now is a pedagogical versus a curricular argument.
Okay.
Curricula is what do we teach. Pedagogy is how we teach. So if you want to make the argument, we need to teach kids how to use a computer. I can tell you we don't have to, but let's pretend we want to make that argument. Cool. That's a curriculum argument. You're telling me what I need to teach. Through some linguistic backflipping, we have turned we need to teach kids how to use tools into we need to teach kids every skill through this tool.
Right.
And that's where things go haywire. Is like, cool, if you think we need to learn how to use Excel, we have a class on Excel, you go to the computer lab, you learn it, go away. But now it means, no, kids need a computer in every class. You need to learn math through a computer. You need to learn reading through a computer.
Right.
And that's a pedagogy argument. That's where I'd say, no, you need to pick the best pedagogy for what you're learning. If you're learning Excel, the best pedagogy might be a computer. If you're learning to read, the best pedagogy isn't going to be a computer, and forcing that into my classroom is going to harm my ability to teach my kids rather than help them.
Yeah.
So I've got no problem saying we need to teach these skills. I don't think we have to, but let's pretend we do. But that shouldn't then necessitate that an entire, by no means does that mean a one-to-one program should ever exist anywhere. That just means you have a computer lab, teach a computer skill, go to town.
Exactly. Right. And the one-to-one situation is very, very isolating. And that's one thing that struck me when my kids started kindergarten is like you look in the classroom and it's all these little kids with headphones on, quietly tapping on a screen, like raising the hand when they ultimately can't figure out how to get to the next level of their math game. But the learning experience has become like isolated and quiet and lonely. And are you worried about that isolation that screen learning imposes on kids?
Of course. The full curriculum at school is about 40% of what kids are going to learn. 60% of what they're going to learn, the hidden curriculum, is all the stuff that happens in between classes.
Wow.
It's all the things they do on the playground. It's all the things they do throwing spitballs while the teacher's trying to teach them stuff. All of these little side things are teaching them, how do I interact in different contexts? How should I treat these people? How should I behave in these settings or situations? Once you get a kid isolated and with a little screen and headphones on, you lose all of that extra learning, all those things going on in the background. How do I sit still for 5 minutes? All that stuff is gone.
Yeah.
So you're stripping away, you might not be stripping away the core curriculum. I'm still teaching you history.
Right.
But you're stripping away 60% of what school is meant to be, which is the additional stuff. How do I behave as a human being? Who am I? Who do I need to be?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as you go to a restaurant and a kid starts acting up. And you put an iPhone or an iPad in front of them.
Emotional regulation. Right.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What you didn't do was teach that kid how to act in a restaurant.
Right.
So now when they're 4 years old, you're going to do it again. Now when they're 6 years old, you're going to do it again. We are now, and it sounds crazy, but I went to a movie with my dad. That's the first time I've been to a movie theater in years. Can't do it, man. There are 20-year-old people in there who have no clue how to act in a movie theater.
Wow.
They think a movie theater is there for them to talk and text and take pictures of each other. I'm like, can't be mad at you. No one ever taught you any of these things because all we did was disconnect you from the world around you. This is the kind of stuff. If you disconnect them from each other, even at a very early age, they're never going to learn the skills they need to survive in school, let alone outside of school.
Right.
Now I'm in a work situation. How am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to act? How do I line up for lunch? How is it my turn, your turn?
Yeah.
All those small things that aren't in the core curriculum just get stripped along the way, unfortunately.
Okay. So let's talk about how this plays out. Like if we keep children on screens at school and then we add generative AI tools, which is, if not already happening this fall, like what kind of generation are we creating? What will these kids be like as adults?
Gen A is doing worse than Gen Z. What we're going to be doing is creating a generation of adults who are, they can still perform. They're not going to be wickedly good creators. They're going to be pretty dang good baseline employees in some jobs, but they're not going to be inventing their own companies or solving problems. They just don't have the knowledge or skills now to do that. But I don't think they're going to want to. I think we're also going to be building a generation of people who are wildly, wildly self-focused. The appearance of ability will substitute for actual ability at that stage. I'm doing a documentary right now on genius, and everyone always asks me, where's the next genius going to come from? Where are they going to pop out? It's not the US. We're done. And it's the tech stuff, basically, because we no longer have a valid school system, because kids are no longer learning meaningful stuff and then forced to transfer and apply that stuff.
Right.
We're not going to be pushing ourselves to do anything meaningful.
Right.
Scandinavia. You want to see where the next genie is going to come from. It'll be Sweden, Finland, or Norway. It'll be one of those.
Yeah.
And it's because they've realized, look, school's got to go back to work. It's got to be rigorous. Learning ain't fun. Good rule of thumb, if your kid is having fun on their machine learning, they're not learning. Their entertainment and learning are not synonymous. Engagement and learning are not synonymous, believe it or not.
Right.
You could be wildly engaged and not learn a dang thing, or be mildly engaged and learn a ton. The two aren't the same thing. They're going to be wonderful kids. They're going to be highly isolated kids. They're going to be self-isolated kids. But I don't think they're going to have the massive skills needed to answer the big problems that the world is facing. They're not going to be solving global warming.
Yeah. What about the addiction piece? So from what I understand, if you have access to an addictive anything, technology, when you're younger, it could lead you to become more susceptible to addiction when you're older, whether that's also to technology or other substances. Is that true? And are we worried about that in our kids?
Absolutely. I usually stick with learning, but if you, as a parent, yes, I will worry about the addictive nature of stuff. But you're spot on. Addiction basically builds a habit system in your brain. And you can never get rid of habits. You can only change them. So once you get addicted to one thing, let me take this back. Imagine learning a language. We all speak English. If you learn a second language, it's going to be much harder. You learn a third language, it's going to be a little easier because you have more to tack that onto. You learn a fourth language, it's going to be much faster and easier because you now have 3 languages to tack that onto. The more you do, the easier it becomes, simply because you've already built the patterns. Habits happen in the same basic way. Once you start a habit pattern, it's easier and easier and easier to build more habits onto it just because you have so much more background understanding. Your brain's like, sweet, you want to do this again? Yeah. Go for it. Man, let's make a new one. The problem with habits is that they don't die, they only change. Like, you've all had friends who were addicted to cigarettes, quit cigarettes, and then became addicted to running. And then they were skeleton thin because they were running constantly. You're like, dude, stop running. You can't really kill an addiction. You can only replace it with something that you hope is more productive. Healthier. So as if we're already building addictions now, if we're building habit patterns now, we can expect them to stick around. And will they ever go away? No. Hopefully they can change it to something more productive, more healthy. But congratulations, you're going to have a pretty addictive personality as you go.
Right. And these EdTech games are even built on addictive technologies. Like, they're built with reward systems and points. And, if you come back every day, it's just fueling addiction when we already have addictive games at home and social media access and YouTube algorithms. And it's just like, why at school are we trying to amplify addiction in children around
We've been sold a pup. We've been told, and again, I got to give schools and parents the benefit of the doubt. We've been told that these were the future. You're still hearing it all day, every day. This is how people learn. This is not how people learn. No one really... Learning is one of those tricky things. Like, when I say every human being digests in the same way, no one's got a problem. Everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense because we're humans. If you spit acid and absorb nutrients through your skins, you're not human. Like, you're digesting, but you're not doing
weird alien. Yeah.
When I say all human beings breathe in the same way, everyone's like, yeah, no, that makes sense. If you somehow had 6 lungs or inhaled, we have these biological systems that work in a very specific way that make us human. And most people recognize that in most systems: digestion, respiration, circulation. No one recognizes that in learning. Learning is a system the same as everything else. It has a baseline pattern. Every human being learns the exact same way. Now, by all means, the input we use might be different. Like, if you're blind, you can't look at a picture, but how information gets in is different than how information is processed through the system. Getting it in is different. Processing it is the same for everyone. If you're alive, we all learn the same way. But we were never taught that. We were never explicitly showed that. So when it comes to learning, a lot of us just think it's magic. So when someone says this will boost learning, we go, cool. But if someone came along and said, this pill is going to help your digestion, we would rightly ask, how? Well, it has these enzymes. And then we could ask, doctor, do those enzymes work the way that person said in our stomach?
Right.
Oh, they don't?
Right.
That person's lying to me. When it comes to learning, we just take it all. Everyone learns different, right? Yeah, your kid is going to get personalized learning for them. Yeah, that sounds right.
Right.
Because no one taught us that, no, there is a way to do it, and that's probably not the right way. And the tools just don't align with it, unfortunately.
And we're just taking the ed tech companies on their word that it's better. And the schools don't have the resources to vet that. And there's no regulatory agency telling running through these ed tech platforms before they hit our children's screens at school.
How could they? Now you get into like shell corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a big company that's a scam company. They own 6 baby companies because each time one gets busted, the core company survives, but they just shove another one in there. You can never stop it.
Right.
It's going to be the same with ed tech. Even if we start regulating it and they say Duolingo is bad for schools, they're going to come out with Duolingi. And it's going to be exactly the same thing. It's just going to be a different name. And now we're going to have to vet that. Then they're going to come Tralinguo. Now we're going to have to vet that. They know they can play that game. They're going to beat us at that game left and right because it's just too hard to do the vetting. That's where the knowledge has to come from the schools. The schools have to say no. They can't be looking for a database because the database is going to be endless.
Okay, so we'll talk about school responsibility, but for parents, like what the hell do parents do here? Because our kids are currently learning from screens and the average American parent feels powerless to change it. Again, I don't want to put it all on them. We can talk about school responsibility, the company's responsibilities, government, but what advice do you have for parents here?
As you were talking about earlier, if you can, as soon as you can, opt out. If your school has a one-to-one program, you should be able to step out of it. Some schools won't let you yet. It will become a law soon. I promise you that's coming down the pipe. Do what you can to opt out.
Okay.
And the trick is when you opt out, more kids are going to opt out. You get yourself a coalition. Always form a coalition. 1 parent is annoying. 10 parents, we got to listen to you now.
Yep.
You have 10 kids opt out. Now every teacher has to have both a digital and an analog version of everything they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The more teachers do analog versions of everything, the more likely they are to simply only do that. The amount of work it takes to do analog, they're going to say, well, I already did this. All kids do that.
Right.
It's a trippy thing that once you hit a threshold of opt-out, most of the teachers are on board now and they're like, see ya. And basically everyone opts out after that because they don't want to do tech anymore.
No.
So get yourself a coalition, opt out if you can. With that coalition, I'd say as well, build your mantra. Build whatever it is you're going to be used to push back against your school. That should have your values. We believe learning is this. We value reading hard copy versus screens. We think student interaction during recess is important. Whatever your values are, use resources out there to find some data to back that up, and that becomes kind of your manifesto. Now you start talking to school. Yeah. Now you can go in with your manifesto. Once you have your group, you start opting out, you have your manifesto, get teachers on board. I promise you, about 70% of teachers in my experience, and I've worked with hundreds of thousands of teachers, they're ready for this to be done. They don't like it. They've seen the decline in their kids for 20 years.
And managing the distractions constantly, like the kids jumping around playing
and now their job is I'm a babysitter rather than a teacher. Or if I'm at an A1 school, I'm a guide. I'm not a guide. A guide is somebody, you want to make sure a kid doesn't learn, guide them. You want to make sure a kid learns, teach them. That's why school exists. Yeah, I could guide you while you figure out heart surgery. Yeah. It's probably going to take you 20 years to sort it out. Or you could acknowledge that we already figured it out. Take 2 months, learn from me. Now start where I've left off, as opposed to just rebuilding the wheel every 2 seconds. You don't need a guide. You need a teacher. Anyway, get teachers on board. Most of them are ready for tech to be done as well. And then as much as you can, you start in your own house. Buy a printer. That's step number 1. Anytime your kid gets anything, you print it out. A homework assignment online, good. Print it out. Yeah. And you need to hand it in online, cool. Give it to me. I'll take a picture of it. I'll do it for you. Buy a printer. Do your tech-free weekends with them, and maybe even do a tech audit with your own kid together. Say, look, I'm in this with you. For 1 week, let's just track our own tech usage. How do we use it? When do we use it? Why do we use it? Yeah. And then we can start to compare and say, you know what? Look, man, I'm using my phone in front of you 2 hours a day. Right. And then I'm mad at you for using a computer to do math homework. That's hypocritical of me. I'll change my directions, you change your directions, and we do this thing together. We basically Now we rebuild our family from analog scratch back at home.
Yes. Amazing. Okay. Thank you for the modeling note. That's really important and hard for parents to hear sometimes.
Yeah. Oh man, we're bad. Believe me, I'm the worst at it.
I
I
know.
totally understand.
Yeah. And for parents, so I have an organization called Tech Safe Learning. At techsafelearning.org, there exists many templates that are opt-out emails, board meeting speeches. You want to opt out of YouTube. You just want to get less screen time, like all kinds of templates for parents to use to communicate with their school. And the key, what you said, is don't do it alone. Like bring together other parents, because I was that crazy parent that wasn't able to sufficiently bring together a group. And so I had to exit that public school because I just wasn't able to accomplish it. But I think if I had more parents, I would have been more successful.
And hopefully if we can get a book like Haidt's Anxious Generation that's just on EdTech,
I know,
that will galvanize a lot of people. That makes it easier to say, look, here's data.
Yeah.
Now I can get a coalition of parents together because we're all going to read the same book. We're all going to be on the same page.
That would be amazing.
Working on that.
Okay.
That'll hopefully be the next tool people can use.
Okay, perfect. So what about the ed tech companies? Like, what would you want to say to them, I wonder? Because I wonder often, like, can they even do better, or is their entire business model just broken?
They can't do better because of the business model. I think they know as well as anyone else does that they got it wrong, but the business model will never allow them to get it right. What's required for deep learning, sustained attention, all these things, you can't make money off of that. That's why teachers are not rich. It's a vocation.
Right.
So I think you're never going to get any help from them. I would encourage them as much as they can, and I'm surprised that they didn't do this. Bring in learning experts. My goodness, man. They, as well as everyone else, just thought learning happened. So long as I put some things on a screen, you'll learn from it.
I know.
That's like me building a diet pill without ever knowing about diets. It's like, I can do this. That's it. But just put a pill in your gut. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that the people with the most money in the world didn't say, hey, should we ask an expert? So if you are a company, man, just ask people, how does learning work? But beyond that, how you're going to actually fit that into a model that brings you profit, best of luck.
Right. Okay, great. And what about the government? Is the government going to get us out of this?
Yes, but only after we get ourselves out. That's the government is always 5 years behind everyone else. So the government is banning cell phones now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But that's only after all the hubbub of the last 2 or 3 years. It's just finally coming to a head.
Yeah.
Like you've heard schools that are like, we banned it years ago. Good, y'all should have banned it years ago. Welcome to the party. Yeah. So I think it's actually going to start with schools. You're going to get independent or individual schools that are going to say, we are a tech-free school. And that's going to become their selling point. Not, we have an iPad for every kid, just like the school down the street.
Right.
We have no iPads.
Right.
Come to our school. And once that starts to become a selling point, you're going to see more schools move. Once ed tech starts to flounder, that's when the government will step in and say, maybe we should do something about this. Cool. If we can knock over the first 20% and the government can take the last 80%, sweet. But they're not going to do anything until we get that first 20%.
So we need to be loud about this right now. And what about legal action? So I have filed lawsuits against a few of the ed tech companies, mainly due to the data privacy issues. You know, all of the thousands of files that I've seen that these companies have on my children, other children, and even teachers that are way out of the scope of education. And knowingly, they're sharing that with dozens of other companies. And that's a data privacy tactic. There's also product default lawsuits happening too. Do you feel like legal action could help move this forward?
Bankrupt someone, they can't do anything. So yeah, absolutely. By all means, if that's your angle. And I think that's probably going to be a much stronger angle than the learning angle, because you can't sue somebody because their tool sucks.
That's what I'm saying.
You can only sue them because they did something they said they wouldn't.
Right.
And so that's why I've always kind of giggled, like, the privacy problems, the addiction problems, the lack of personalization problems, the lack of social problems, all of that, I still imagine there would be parents who would be totally willing to forego all of that so long as these tools helped learning. Take my kids' privacy. I don't care if my kid's a loner so long as they're brilliant.
Right.
But they don't even do that.
I know.
They don't even meet their basic function. And so that's where I'm like, I don't even know what these things have going for them other than money now. So anything you can do to chip away at their armor,
okay,
do it.
The resource there for parents, if they're interested, is edtech.law. And that website and firm, just go there and read all the interesting research and data around the issues with EdTech. But there are also two parents, Julie and Andy in Texas, that are incredible, and they're parents themselves. So love their team if parents are interested in that. Let's also talk about schools. So what can schools do to help us to help the kids succeed in this area?
Yeah. It's scary when you say stop going backwards in the name of progress. You might have to regress. You might have to go back to what worked,
right,
rather than what we're told should work.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that because in the 90s, about 92 to about 2000 was absolute peak performance across the board. If you were in school in the 90s, congratulations, you experienced the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we can go back there. All the schools still have the same stuff. We didn't ditch the chalkboards.
Right.
So I would say to any school, one, put a hiatus on all new tech. Put a moratorium. For right now, just hit pause. No new tech for at least 12 months.
Right.
Then do a big audit of the tech you've got. How are you using it? When is it being used? You might be surprised how much crap you have that no one touches.
Right.
And cool. Great. How much money does it cost? And then once you figure out what you don't need to be wasting, get rid of all that.
Yep.
The few things you choose to keep, now you do an audit on performance. Now you say, okay, let's get some actual data. You can regress this. We've had this tool for 3 years. We've used it in year 9 for 3 years. Cool. Use that data. Compare that to data from 6 years ago, the kids who never even had a chance with it.
Mm-hmm.
You already have all the data you need. Have we seen growth? Have we seen drop?
Right.
If we've seen drop, time to rethink that tool. If we've seen stagnation, I'd say time to rethink that tool. Right. If we've seen growth, cool, keep the damn tool. If it's working, work it. If you've got the data to show me that it's doing its thing,
right,
I'm the first one to say, then keep that thing. So hit pause, do your tech audit, do your success audit, and now start working with teachers. Actually ask your teachers, what do we want to do? What do we not want to do? And I would always say to all leaders of schools, man, go back to your core value. Why do you exist? And every school will have a different thing. I mean, if you're an art school versus a military school versus, you're going to say something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine most public schools are going to say our core function is learning. Mm-hmm. That's why we exist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every decision you make going forward on EdTech has to defer to that.
Yeah.
If you have a piece of EdTech that makes my job as a teacher easier, but harms my kids' learning, sorry, make my job harder. If you have a piece of tech that makes your job organizing data and sending it to parents easier, but it doesn't help kids learning, sorry, you gotta have your base that you're gonna make all of your decisions on.
Yeah.
Now, again, for me, it's learning. If you don't choose learning, fine, whatever your school is gonna be, but find your core and then all your decisions have to defer back to that core. And if the answer is no, it doesn't meet that core, then I don't care how flashy it is, how much it makes your life better, get rid of it. It's just not important anymore.
Boom. That was crazy. I feel like you should write that in an article. What you expand on that as a guide for schools. That was so good.
Why should we exist?
Right. But just start to finish. This is your guide. And parents will be so happy about it, if you want parent satisfaction. And then in the end, you might save a lot of money too, because, Simi Valley School District up here in LA, they got rid of one-to-one devices because of the cost of the devices, because repairing and screen repairing was costing them over $1 million a year in their district. So that was what they leaned on. But I have a feeling it was more than that. But that was the reasoning they pushed
knew
out.
They were getting trashed. But think about it. That's not $1 million you lose. That's $1 million you now get to redirect into what works for learning.
Yeah, more teachers.
So if learning is our core and we say, hey, a driver of learning is well-prepared teachers, sweet. I got $1 million to prep teachers. I don't need that much. What else helps learning?
Right.
Making sure kids have healthy food. Shoot, I still got $500,000 left. What else can we do?
Air conditioning.
How much more you
Isn't there a stat that investing in air conditioning helps kids learn better than tech or something like that?
Than one-to-one computers. The impact of one-to-one devices in schools sits around 0.16. The impact of air conditioning, of temperature, ambient temperature, 0.21.
Oh my God.
If you're comfortable, you will learn better than if you have a computer.
Holy cow.
Plumbing, and no one believed me, so I never even quoted that stat. Plumbing, if you have good toilets in your school, it's around 0.37. It's almost double what you'd expect from one. So if you want to invest $1 million,
get some good plumbers.
Buy a stall.
Right.
Let the people go to bathroom in peace. They'll learn better than if you shove a screen in their face and they're hot.
And they really have to pee.
And they really have to pee. But they're nervous.
Right, they're nervous. They can't go. Okay, one last topic. Sorry, we're going a little bit long.
No,
but I want to get your thoughts on AI because this is coming to schools. You know about the executive order in April to get AI introduced to kids as early as possible. And this week, actually, the Department of Education issued guidance on the use of AI in schools, and it is very tech forward. I thought I could read to you a quote from the press release about this announcement from U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, and I'd love you just to respond to it. Quote, AI drives personalized learning, sharpens critical thinking, and prepares students with problem-solving skills that are vital for tomorrow's challenges.
Nope, nope, and nope. And I have the hard data to show you. No, heck no. That's what you want it to do. Man, look, think about it. The problem with AI is that there is a way to use it in that manner. Technically, we don't know what it is, but I promise you there is some way to use AI to build creative and critical thinking.
Okay.
The question is, would anyone ever actually do that? There is a way for me to gain fitness using my car. I could pop my car into neutral and push it to work. I can gain fitness from my car. No one's going to do that. We're all going to lose fitness because how we actually use cars is we sit in them and drive. So believe it or not, when people say it's got all this potential and promise, I always say, cool, that's what it could do. A lot of things could do things. What is it actually going to do?
Right.
How are kids actually using it? Do you think they're going to use it to go home and query their deep thinking about metacognitive abilities? Oh, can I be creative? Hell no. They're going to use it to look up answers. They're going to pop those answers down on a piece of paper and they're going to hand it to you and say, I did this. Mm-hmm. Oops. So the brilliance of what people think AI can be and what it's actually going to be in schools is night and day. Kids will use it to cheat. That's what we always did.
Right.
If it was around when I was there, I would use it too. Mm-hmm. We use it to avoid learning. And here's where you see AI is not a learning tool. It was never meant to be. It isn't one. It is probably the worst developed tool for learning that we can think of. AI is a production tool. It assumes you already have expertise. AI only becomes useful when you have expertise enough to vet it, to use it to offload skills that you already know how to do. Think of math, right? Stats. I'm really good at stats. It would take me about 20 minutes to hand do all the stats if I wanted to do, on a paper I'm working on right now, if I wanted to do it by hand. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like doing that. So instead, I just plug it into AI. You do it. Now, my expertise allows me to immediately vet it. When it spits back a couple of numbers, I can immediately go, oh, that ain't even close, mate. Or, that's probably right. Let's go. Bam. But that comes after expertise. I can only vet it because I've already done the hard work.
Yeah.
If you never did the hard work to learn stats and you immediately jump to AI and say, do this for me, you have no clue if it's right, you have no clue if it's wrong, you have no clue what it means, you have no clue how to interpret it, you have no clue how to narratize it. It's just noise to you.
Yeah.
So you don't learn from it, you just spit it out and throw it. So I always say, man, AI is good for experts. If you're a teacher, use AI. Doesn't faze me in the least. If you're learning how to become a teacher, do not use AI. You are not ready for that tool yet. It's a production tool. It's not a learning tool.
Okay.
So when they talk about it, personalized learning and stuff, man, we've had personalized learning since 1925. It does not matter. You want learning to be good? Make it personal. Make it interactive between me and another human being. Mm-hmm. Align the pedagogy to the content, not the person. Everyone learns better when learning is aligned to the content. Mm-hmm. If I want to teach you how to dance, I don't care if you're a visual, kinesthetic, auditory learner. We all learn better if we get up and dance.
Right.
Doesn't matter what your preferences are.
Right.
And then when you let kids choose their own adventure, when you guide them instead of teach them, they will always fall into what's called the fluency illusion. They pick the easiest path and mistake that for competence. When we do something that's wickedly easy for us, we assume that means we get it very well.
Right.
When it comes to learning, the easier something is, probably the less you understand it. If you're not struggling, you ain't learning. So when you let kids do their own thing, they will all do right down the pipe what they're good at, what they like, what they choose. Here's an example. You ask a group of kids to just reread something 4 times. That's easy as hell. And then you ask them, how well do you think you're going to do on a test? They'll say hey, 75%, I got this. Give them a test, they'll be down at 40%. They suck. Give another group of kids, read it once, and now I'm going to quiz you on it 2 times. That sucks. That's hard. And now you say, how well do you think you get it? They'll say 50%. I'm still struggling. Test them, they'll be at 60%. We are really bad at human beings at gauging what is good for learning.
Okay.
And so when we leave that adaptability to tools and to kids, they're going to pick the easiest path every time.
Okay.
And that's where teachers come in and say, no, I'm going to teach you how teaching needs to be done.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'm trying to help parents engage with their schools and contact their schools about AI use. And so I worked with Chris McKenna at Protect Young Eyes. We have a template for parents at the top of my website, scrollingtodeath.com. But it goes through some of the recent studies about red flags around using AI tools, chatbots, all the things. But what do you think would resonate most with schools regarding the threats or the risks of kids using AI?
Everyone says AI, you can skip the facts and jump into the deep stuff. AI allows us to stop wasting time learning stuff and jump into critical thinking, creativity, all those skills that the ed person just said.
Linda McMahon.
All deeper level thinking, all higher order thinking skills, creativity, critical thinking, all of these things rely on internalized knowledge. The person who has more facts within their long-term memory will always show more creativity, will always show better critical thinking. All those things that we want come from learning stuff. So when we use AI to avoid the process of learning stuff, that is the number one way to make sure you're never going to see deep creativity. This is why I said the next generation will not be highly creative. It's just they won't have enough knowledge to do it. We have mistaken access to information for knowledge of information. Access has never been a problem. AI makes it fast. Google made it fast. The Encyclopedia Britannica, before that, the school library, before that, man, we always had access to information. That never stopped anyone from having to internalize, embody that information in order to use it meaningfully. This is why if you look at any level of genius or eminence, they all start with over a decade of hard training. Before they do their first bit of creative anything, they're just learning. They're internalizing information. So if we say, look, kids, don't worry about learning history, look up the facts, and now you're not going to see the kind of creativity you really want.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. So, Jared, thank you for being here. For parents who don't know, you have published 6 books, over 50 research articles. Your work has been featured in New Yorker, Atlantic, Economist, Harvard Business Review, all the spots. And you have a new book coming out, which you can tease a little. Can you tell us about that?
It is the EdTech book.
Yay.
I don't know what it's going to. So it was done, but it's now with the agent, and so it is changing wildly.
Okay.
So I don't know. It was originally called Wired for Failure. It was the How to Push Back Against EdTech.
Yeah.
But
they didn't like that.
Keep an eye out. Could come out and just be a book about flowers once they're done with it. I don't know what the heck's going to happen.
It better be about EdTech. We need this book. And it's going to be, at the right time, right? Because like you said, we need parents activating on this now so that the government can follow up with some regulation in a couple of years.
Telling them, and they're like, it'll take 2 to 3 years to get it out. I'm like, okay.
We need it now.
I know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe, I don't know. I'll find a way to get it out.
Okay. Well, as soon as it's out, I will be announcing it. I'm really grateful, Jared, to you for turning your attention and your energy and your interest to like children and screens, because we're all benefiting from your efforts here. And I can't wait to read anything you put out, especially your book when it drops. I'm going to put out good vibes that happens soon, but we'll talk again real soon. I have a feeling.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for the next one.
Thanks, Jared.